Let's Science is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
3, 2, 1.
We live in a universe of scientific wonders.
Every day, scientists are inching towards breakthroughs which can change our lives.
We're playing our small part in sharing these wonders with you.
That's why today is a fine day for science.
So let's science.
All right, so Caroline, we are in your very warm hands. There's a reason why I said that. So, well, it's not really warm right now, but
it's
over
a bit
to you.
cool here.
So today, let's talk about the weather, in particular, the heat waves. Like everybody, around the world at the moment, except for the Southern Hemisphere, are experiencing heat waves. And I just thought, that's an interesting topic to talk about at the moment. And let's talk about that in context of weather patterns and a bit of science. So let's see what's going on here. Currently in Melbourne, it's winter and it's been quite cold. However, we're hearing news that there are some quite extreme heat waves occurring in Europe and Northern America at the moment, and even parts of Asia. And the European Space Agency have satellites that monitor the Earth's land and sea temperatures, and they're predicting that this year Europe will face potentially the hottest temperatures ever recorded. The Acropolis in Greece has been closed during the hottest parts of the day to prevent tourists from becoming unwell from the extreme heat. Rome, Sicily, and Spain are experiencing temperatures in the 40s. And just because we should mention Malta, Lindsay, it's our homeland.
I was about to say, it is hot up there, now at the moment.
It is hot. And Malta's, to the south of Sicily, and they're looking at the forecast this week. They're having a week of 37 degrees Celsius every day.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
With overnight lows of 27 degrees every night.
That's not a low.
That's not a low.
Yeah, that's daytime. Yeah.
That's a high temperature for some. Like our mum and sis.
Sorry, they've had a few power outages as well, haven't they, too?
There's been a lot of power outages. Our relatives have been sending us, on the group chat saying that they haven't got any power. And that's,
no, that's not good either.
we have our cousin Lindsay Stefan is working in the heat on roofs at the moment. And he's finding it hard to find ice vest. So, I feel for him as well.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we're thinking of you all in Malta.
Especially the elderly. Oh, well, everyone, of course. But everyone who is.
Everyone.
Understand.
Totally. And even in North America, top temperature of 48 degrees was recorded during the week in Phoenix, Arizona. In Death Valley, one of the hottest places on Earth in California. The forecast has been sitting in the high 40s and low 50s degrees Celsius.
Crazy. Can I just say a quick anecdote? So I was reading a story. There's a guy, I didn't realize this, right? He does a 1 mile run in Death Valley every year.
I think I've seen
but he calls it, his Darth Valley Death Mile because he does it in a Darth Vader costume.
Oh my goodness.
So he trains for all year long. Yeah, and he did it this year and commented on how extremely hot it was.
But he's doing it for
funny
cause.
and very silly at the same time.
Well, it is. Yeah.
Well,
he's doing it for a cause, I believe, too. Yeah. Yep.
Goodness sakes. And especially since they're expecting a record high of 54 degrees Celsius for this weekend. So
insane. Yep.
Yes. Currently in Southern California and Canada as well. And in Spain, there are wildfires, uncontrollable wildfires at the moment. In Canada, 10 million hectares or 25 million acres of bushland have been burnt so far. Yep. And with more damage expected as the summer goes on. So yes, heat waves are happening all over the Northern Hemisphere. And it's been partly to blame on rising average global temperature as well as an El Nino weather pattern. The highest average global temperature ever recorded was actually this year on July the 5th with a temperature of 17.23 degrees Celsius. And the world has already warmed by about 1.1 degrees since the industrial era began. And temperatures are likely to keep rising because unless something is done, obviously, to cut emissions, global warming will just get worse. So Paolo Kepi, a lecturer in climate science at the Imperial College in London, said that higher global temperatures were undoubtedly contributing to the increased incidence of extreme weather. He said, of course, it's not unusual to have a heat wave in the summer per se, but what's becoming really unusual is the collection of heat waves. We have the baseline temperature shifting upwards, so you are shifting the odds towards the more severe extreme events and fewer cold extreme events. So global warming is a thing and it affects the world's climate. And we've all heard about how greenhouse gases are emitted in the atmosphere and have been leading to this phenomena. I mean, I've seen a lot of charts and it shows the temperatures of the world, and it's like a graph going up and down, and the temperatures are basically the average global temperatures are moving up along the graph slowly. So we're heading towards more extreme heat and less colder days. So I have links in the show notes and you can have a look at those as well.
Yeah.
Had a look at the NASA website too, and they have a statement saying, what's perhaps the most important to remember about global surface temperature fluctuations is that despite short-term ups and downs, the evidence shows that our planet is steadily accumulating heat. Scientists assessing global warming study Earth's entire heat content, not just what happens in one part of the atmosphere or one component of the Earth system. And what they have found is that the balance of energy in the Earth system is out of whack. Our lower atmosphere is warming. The ocean is accumulating more energy. Land surfaces are absorbing energy, and the Earth's ice is melting.
Yeah, yep, that's right.
And scientists say that the high temperatures we are seeing and many people are experiencing are being driven by climate change and the naturally occurring weather pattern that I mentioned earlier called El Nino, which happens every 3 to 7 years and causes the temperatures to rise. So what about El Nino? What is it? So El Nino is a climate pattern that occurs in the tropical Pacific Ocean. El Nino means little boy in Spanish, and South American fishermen first noticed periods of unusually warm water in the Pacific Ocean in the 1600s. During an El Nino event, there's a significant warming of the ocean surface temperature in the central and eastern equatorial Pacific. This warming occurs when the trade winds, and the trade winds are the winds which flow from east to west in the Earth's equatorial region. And when the winds weaken or reverse, they can reverse, reducing the upwelling of cold water from the ocean depths. So what happens is the upwelling is when normal conditions of the wind blowing across the ocean surface pushes water away, and then warm water from below replaces this water. So in El Nino, cold water is not able to replace warm water, and the temperature of the water rises.
Okay.
As a result, warmer than average sea surface temperatures are observed in the central and eastern Pacific, particularly off the coast of South America. So El Nino has effects on global weather patterns and impacts different regions of the planet in different ways. So here are some of the typical impacts of regions of the world. So in South America, El Nino often leads to increased rainfall across the west coast of South America, particularly in Peru and Ecuador. It can result in flooding and landslides. In North America, El Nino can influence weather patterns, with the southern part experiencing wetter conditions and the northern part experiencing warmer and drier conditions. In Asia and Australia, El Nino can bring drier than average conditions to Southeast Asia, including Indonesia and Philippines, and Australia may experience below average rainfall leading to drought conditions in some regions. And I think we are having quite a mild winter this year, hardly any rain.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and we are officially in El Nino now, so I would agree with that.
Yeah.
In Africa, El Nino can disrupt rain patterns, resulting in drier conditions. In the Pacific Islands, El Nino can lead to reduced rainfall and increasing risk of drought. Now, El Nino typically lasts for several months to a year or two, and they can occur regularly with intervals ranging from 2 to 7 years on average. Climate scientists and meteorologists closely monitor El Nino events to understand their behavior and to provide forecasts of potential impacts. Now, El Nino tends to occur more often than La Nina, and I think that, just thinking about the last little while, I think that's true. We have just finished a La Nina, but we do hear about El Nino a bit more. But let's talk about La Nina, because it's good to know what the opposite of an El Nino is. La Nina means little girl in Spanish. And during La Nina events, the trade winds are even stronger than usual, which pushes more warm water around towards Asia off the west coast of the Americas, and upwelling increases, bringing cold, nutrient-rich water to the surface. So the cold waters in the Pacific push the jet stream northward. This tends to lead to drought in the southern US and heavy rains and flooding in the Pacific Northwest and Canada. So there's wetter and colder conditions in North America. In South America, there will be increased rainfall. Asia and Australia, it brings above average rainfall. And Australia did experience wetter than normal conditions. We had many crazy floods the last few years.
Yes,
that's true.
Flooding like we've never seen before, to be honest.
There are Victorian towns that are still recovering from floods now.
Exactly.
Yes.
Many people have lost their houses. People are still suffering from all of that. In Africa, La Nina can influence rainfall patterns leading to wetter conditions. And the Pacific Islands, La Nina can bring increased rainfall to the islands, which leads to risk of flooding as well. So, I mean, apart from human activity having an effect on climate all over the planet, natural weather systems seem to be producing more extreme weather events due to the rising average global temperature, as I mentioned earlier. And from what weather scientists are saying, these two go in hand as to how severe normal weather events will be. So the new normal is happening now, it seems. And also, I think from what we're seeing in the Northern Hemisphere, Australia had better prepare for a long, hot summer.
That's what I was feeling too, yes. Yeah.
Yes, because, as I mentioned, we're having a kind of it's very cold, but it's mild. We're having kind of more spring days, I would say.
It's starting to feel that way, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Rather than the dreary, raining, normal, like in Melbourne, usually winter is usually really wet and cold and dreary, and like you just don't want to live because it's so horrible. But this year, I mean, the sun's shine. It's crisp and cold, but it's just bearable, which is unusual, because for me to say winter is bearable, Caroline. It's very unusual.
Okay, this must be a good winter for Caroline.
So there we have it. Something to think about anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You presented it really well. And I think it's important for us to all think about the role that we play, because, Caroline, you weren't there being a climate alarmist, as some people might accuse people of being when they state, the scientific facts. But it's important for us, what's the Catholic angle on this, right? Which I'll throw in, right? Is that we are called to be stewards of creation, to look after, and this is a spiritual thing. We are, Pope Francis has talked about the integral ecology, which is that we are part of the natural world. We're not, as human beings, we're not separate from it. We are part of this natural world, which is nature. We're not aliens from somewhere else. We are integrated into this ecosystem, which is why we're alive, right? It's because we live in it. It's made to sustain human life. And in return, God makes us stewards of the earth. You go back to Genesis, to keep and till the earth and so on. To keep it beautiful, because creation is beautiful and awe-inspiring and all those things. And creation is not just the planet, but the entire universe. It's all beautiful and creates awe and wonder for us. But in this particular, little corner in the back streets of the Milky Way where we are on this planet, this is our home. And looking after our home is, for one, to sustain our lives, but also to sustain the lives of others. It's a Catholic social teaching moment, right? And Catholic social teaching, by the way, is not some fringe theory. It is integrated into the teaching of the church. It comes from Christ, and looking after the planet is our responsibility. So I think it's up to all of us to think about what our role is in, where human beings are contributing to greenhouse gases and so on. It's up to all of us to think about what our role is, and to petition our politicians to have it on their conscience as well, because they're the ones who make the changes at the end of the day. So I don't care if you call yourself politically conservative or politically progressive. That means nothing. It doesn't change the weather. But what makes a difference is, at least for Catholics, is listening to our conscience. Is what the science is saying, is it calling us to do better? So yes, there are, because I know people make the arguments of, well, this is what the world naturally does. Of course it does, but
it does.
but there is also what we do as well, which can exacerbate it as well. So we have to think about that part, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess that's the point I was really trying to make, you know. And I mean, I have heard some commentators on various radio stations trying to disprove that there is global warming and weather patterns are natural and all that. But they have to really dig to get some evidence for this. However, it really takes nothing to look at websites such as NASA, such as ESA, such as, you know, there are many, many agencies who have been monitoring temperature.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the graphs speak for themselves.
The data doesn't lie, does it? That's right.
No,
exactly.
It's there. Yeah. Everybody there. It's all separate data being collected and everyone's coming up with the same results. Yeah. And then you just need to look at the news. You see the extreme weather events. You see people suffering. You can't deny what's happening. And like you said, I'm not trying to be alarmist, but I do want to highlight as well, like you're saying, we do need to look after our little patch of earth where we can and contribute any way that we can. And of course, we can't stop big companies from emitting, and we're all guilty of using the products, you know, from the factories, you know, and for using electricity and all of that. But there are small ways to do, you know, to help. Like if you're able to put solar panels on your house, you can free electricity straight from the sun. You don't need to get a lot of it from the coal power stations. Throwing out your recycling in the correct way so that products can be recycled. If you can reuse something, reuse it, you know, so the energy doesn't need to be going back into recycling things and making new products and things like that. So, I mean, these are very small things, but imagine everybody doing
and that's
all
the idea,
these little things. That's exactly right. And like if you have a garden, try and plant it up with plants because that will reduce temperature as well. If you have a very concretey garden, that's okay. Put some pots everywhere. Put them all together and, you know, plant lots of plants and you'll be benefiting yourself from a cooler summer in your garden, benefiting animals who need shelter and food and all of that. You know, there are really practical little things that we can do.
And making that little contribution to the health of the planet too. It's all everyone can do that. Yeah.
There's a lot of change in the weather. We always talk about it at the moment, you know. What happens is we have hot summers, but not very hot. We may have a week where it's maybe 30s, you know. I remember, what was it, guys? A few years ago when we had the whole 2 weeks was like over nearly 40 degrees.
High 30s.
And of course we have wildfires. And then, you know, and then we talk about this winter has been as cold as we thought it would be. I know it's 13 degrees for us. Okay, Americans, it's not cold, all right? But it is cold for us, okay?
That's cold for us,
Yes, it is. For us, it's cold. If you're saying, oh, it's getting to a top of 13 degrees Celsius, I'm like, well, that's not a top. That is...
we're all like, that is cold. That's cold.
And it doesn't help when we have those warmer weathers where the ground is so hard and we have drought and then we have a whole, like you said, Caroline, a whole lot of rain. That rain has got nowhere to go. It can't seep into the soil because the soil is so hard. It needs to flow and go out everywhere. And climate is changing. You know, we even talk about it. We don't have our 4 seasons in here in Australia that much. We may have like a hot day and a cold day, and that's it. Not in sort of in between as much as we used to have. Like a spring.
No, we have all 4 seasons in 1 day.
That is true. That is true. Or sometimes in Malta, 4 seasons in 1 hour. But it's
right.
But climate is changing, and we need to change that very soon.
Let's Science is brought to you by StarQuest Media and is a fortnightly podcast that brings you the scientific wonders of our universe from a distinctly Catholic point of view. For more from Caroline, Lindsay, and friends, listen to the StarQuest show, Catholics of Oz. Find links from today's show at sqpn.com/science and find the Catholics of Oz at sqpn.com/Oz. Be sure to follow the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you can find podcasts, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. The generous donations of our patrons at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Let's Science and all the shows at StarQuest, which makes our nonprofit mission possible. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Join us next time for more scientific wonders, and thank you for listening to Let's Science on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Technology. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/technology.